I never planned to fall for the boy next door. I didn't even know his name until the night he saw me crying through the window. It started with a glance, one of those accidental meetings of the eyes that should have ended with someone looking away. But neither of us did. It was late, past midnight, when I caught him standing at his open window, shoulders tense, lit by the blue glow of his phone. I was sitting in my kitchen, still wearing my work badge, trying to finish cold noodles, when our eyes locked. He didn't flinch. Neither did I. Zach had moved in 2 weeks earlier. I'd only seen him once, unloading boxes with his dad, who barked orders like a drill sergeant. I figured he was just another teenage neighbor I'd never speak to. I was 27, a high school English teacher barely staying afloat in my own life. He was probably 18 or 19, which felt like an entire generation away. But that first night when we saw each other through glass and shadows, something shifted. The next day, I lingered outside longer than usual, hoping to spot him again. Nothing. Then 3 nights later, I heard the bass from his room, not loud enough to be obnoxious, just enough to know someone inside was trying not to think. I stepped out for air, and there he was again, leaning on the sill, arms crossed. This time I spoke. "Late night?" He looked over, surprised. "Couldn't sleep." I nodded, walked closer to the fence between our houses. "Music helps?" He hesitated. "Sometimes." "You?" "I usually go with whiskey and insomnia." That made him smile, barely. "I'm Zach." "Elias." That was it. The beginning. Over the next week, our strange, quiet conversations continued. We never planned them. Sometimes he'd wave me over. Other times I'd see him outside and cross the yard like it was natural. He didn't talk much, but when he did, his words were careful, heavy, like they cost something. One night I found him sitting on the back steps, cigarette between his fingers, staring at nothing. I hesitated before walking over. He didn't move when I sat next to him. "My dad's gone for the weekend," he said. "Sister too. House is too quiet. Some people would kill for a quiet house." He exhaled slowly. "Not this kind." I waited. The silence between us was tight, but not cold. Finally he asked, "Do you ever feel like you're just waiting for something that's never going to happen?" His voice cracked slightly, like he wasn't used to saying that out loud. I answered honestly, "Every day." That was the first time he really looked at me, not just glanced, but searched. And for the first time I saw something behind those tired eyes. Loneliness. Not the usual teenage boredom, but something deeper. The kind that grows when you're never allowed to say what you really feel. From then on, it was like our talks became the only thing that felt real. I stopped going to bed early. He stopped pretending he wasn't waiting for me. One night, we sat on the back steps again, and he started talking about school. "I skipped prom," he said. "Wasn't your thing?" "No," he said. I wanted to ask someone, but I didn't. I knew what he meant. I didn't ask. Instead, I said, "Sometimes the people we want to ask are the ones we're not supposed to." He turned his head toward me, his eyes hard to read, or the ones who'd never say yes. His voice was flat, but his fingers twitched slightly, like the words hurt on the way out. It hit me harder than I expected. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of anything he said, but because I was starting to care, really care, and I knew that was dangerous. The next day, something was different. Zach didn't come outside. The window stayed dark. No music, no cigarette smoke, no light. I waited 3 days before knocking. He opened the door slowly, his eyes hollow. "Hey, you okay?" He stepped aside to let me in, but didn't speak until we were in the kitchen. My dad found some texts. From a guy? He lost it. I didn't ask what the text said. I didn't have to. He told me if I ever acted on it, if I embarrassed him. Zach's voice shook. He said I'm lucky I'm still under his roof. I stood still, unsure what to say. My pulse was pounding, not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. I'd seen this happen. I'd lived it years ago, in a different state, under a different name. He looked at me like he was waiting to be judged. I sat down across from him. You don't have to explain. He didn't speak, but his eyes welled up, and he quickly turned away. That night he didn't want me to leave, and I didn't want to go. But I knew what was coming next. The fallout, the conflict, the shame he never asked for, and somehow I was already a part of it. 3 days passed. No lights in his window, no music, no Zach. I waited every night like some ritual, patrolling the fence line with silent hope. But his house remained dark, his presence erased. I started to think he had left for good. Maybe his father had done more than threaten. Maybe I should have stepped in sooner. Then on the 4th night, my phone buzzed. Can I come over? Just 5 words. No context. No emojis. Just Zach. My hands trembled as I typed back. Always. 10 minutes later, there was a soft knock at the door. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in posture. He stepped in without saying a word, and sat at the kitchen table like it was the only place he could breathe. I poured water and slid it across to him. He didn't touch it. He told me I'm disgusting, Zach finally said, eyes locked on the floor. Said I embarrassed him, that I've got 2 weeks to find somewhere else. I froze. He kicked you out? Zach didn't answer. He just kept staring at nothing. I don't have anyone to stay with, he added after a moment. Mom lives out of state. Sister's a mess. And I couldn't go to anyone from school, they'd know. You can stay here, I said, faster than I should have, until you figure things out. Zach looked up sharply. I didn't mean... I know, I said, but I mean it. There was a silence between us, but it wasn't the same as before. It was heavier now, shaped by fear, uncertainty, and something else neither of us had the language for. That night, he took the couch. I offered him the bed. He refused. I stayed up, staring at the hallway, listening for signs that he hadn't dissolved into the dark. In the morning, he was gone. No note, no text. I walked through the city all afternoon, checking bus stops, coffee shops, places where someone might hide when they don't want to be found. Nothing. I started to think I'd made it worse, offering safety, only to let him vanish. By evening, I filed a missing persons report. The officer barely looked up. He's 18. Yes. Left voluntarily? He was kicked out. Not our problem then. That was the end of their help. 2 days later, I found him in the corner of a youth shelter, sitting with his arms wrapped around his knees. His hoodie was damp from rain, his face pale from exhaustion. He looked up when I called his name, but didn't move. You shouldn't have come, he said quietly. I didn't want you to see me like this. You don't get to decide that, I said, kneeling beside him. You don't get to disappear. Zach flinched, not at my words, but at the way I said them. Like they hurt more, coming from someone who actually cared. We didn't speak again until I'd convinced the staff to let me take him home for a few nights. I signed forms, promised to follow protocol, promised not to get too involved, but I already was. That night, we sat on the steps again. The silence was sharp. He read every text, Zach whispered. even the ones I didn't send. I didn't ask what they said. I didn't need to. I was going to tell you, he said. Before everything, I wanted to say how I felt. I stayed quiet, but I got scared. Not of you, of what it would mean if you didn't feel the same. I finally spoke. Zach, what happened isn't your fault. He looked at me like he didn't believe that. I've been through this too, I added. Different time, different state. But the same silence, the same fear. He blinked slowly. Did they kick you out? No, but they made sure I knew I wasn't welcome. He turned his head away, but not before I saw the way his jaw tensed. I'm tired of hiding, he said, but I don't know how to be anything else. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, but I want to. His voice cracked again, but this time he didn't try to hide it. I want to stop pretending. I want to stop looking over my shoulder like I'm about to ruin someone's life just by existing. I took a slow breath, careful with my words. You haven't ruined anyone's life, but I think someone ruined your trust. That's not the same. He didn't answer, but something in his shoulders softened. Later, as I brought him a blanket, he grabbed my wrist. Thank you, he said, voice barely audible. I didn't let go. I'm not going anywhere. When I turned to leave, he held on. I mean it, he said, not just for the place to sleep, for seeing me. His eyes searched mine again, and this time I didn't look away. There was nothing romantic in that moment, nothing physical, just the weight of survival and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, he could finally stop running. The week after Zach came back to my place, everything felt fragile. We didn't talk about what happened with his father. We didn't talk about the shelter. We just existed. Two people trying not to fall apart. But the silence didn't last. On Monday morning, I walked into the teacher's lounge and felt it immediately. The stares, the clipped greetings, the coffee pot that suddenly didn't get passed to me. I didn't understand why until I saw the post. It was a blurry photo, Zach stepping into my apartment, my hand on his shoulder. The caption underneath was vague but poisonous. Local teacher caught with underage boy? My stomach dropped. The account was anonymous, but the damage had already begun. I wasn't named directly, but everyone recognized me. The hallway whispers, the way students looked at me, half curiosity, half something darker, like they'd been waiting for a reason to doubt me. That evening, I sat Zach down. Someone posted a photo of you coming here. People are talking. His eyes widened. I'm sorry, I didn't think. This isn't your fault, I cut in. But we need to be careful now. I'm a teacher. You're a student, even if you're not mine. People don't care about the truth. They care about the story. Zach nodded, but the guilt was already sitting on his shoulders. A few days later, the principal called me in. Her face was blank, professional. Someone lodged a complaint, she said. We're not accusing you of anything, but until we investigate. Suspension, I said, flatly. Paid leave. I left the school with my head high, but my heart caving in. I'd built my life around that job, around the idea that I could help kids like Zach before they broke. Now I was the one being torn apart. When I got home, he was waiting. I'll leave, he said the moment I walked in. I didn't mean to ruin everything for you. You didn't ruin anything, I said. They did. People who only know how to tear things down. He looked at me, torn between staying and protecting me. I could see it. How badly he wanted to disappear again. I'm not going to ask you to go, I said. But if you stay, we need to be clear. No one can misread this. Not again. I understand. We kept our distance after that. We still talked, still watched shows on the couch, still cooked meals together. But something changed. Not in a bad way, just in a cautious one. Like we were walking through a minefield and knew exactly where every step might blow up. And then came the letter. Typed, anonymous. Left in my mailbox. You don't belong here. We know what you are. Take your guest and go before it gets worse. I stared at the paper, my hands cold. Zach was behind me. He read it over my shoulder. Is this about me? It's about hate, I said. That's all. He sat down slowly. This is why people stay silent. Exactly why we won't. The next day, I made a decision. I contacted a local youth organization and asked to speak. Not as a victim, not as a teacher, just as someone who saw what silence could do. They booked me for a small community talk. Nothing major, but word spread. Quickly. Too quickly. On the night of the event, the room was full. Some familiar faces, parents of former students, a colleague who once shared her lunch with me, even one of my quietest seniors from last semester, now in the back row, arms crossed. Zach was there too. Sitting in the third row, hands clasped tight. I told the truth. I told them how easy it is to judge people we don't understand, how quickly assumptions replace facts, how a simple act of kindness became ammunition for rumors. I didn't mention Zach by name. I didn't have to. I spoke about trust, about the damage that fear creates, and how sometimes the only thing that saves us is someone willing to see us clearly. When I finished, the room was quiet. No claps, no boos, just stillness. Then slowly a hand rose. It was the quiet senior from the back. He stood up, looked at me for a long moment, and said, I wish I had a teacher like you. That was when the room cracked open. One by one, people stood. Some clapped, some just nodded. But I could feel it. That shift. The line between scandal and truth finally moving. Outside, after the talk, Zach walked beside me without saying a word. Then he stopped. Why did you do that? Because someone had to. He looked down, then back at me. That night in the shelter, I thought about ending everything. My breath caught, but I didn't. Because you saw me. You didn't run. I won't run now either, I said. Zach didn't reply. He just walked beside me, quiet and steady. And for the first time since this all began, the silence didn't feel like fear. It felt like healing. A week after the community talk, I was called back into the school office. The principal looked tired. She didn't mention the anonymous post, didn't mention the letter in my mailbox. Just slid a folder across the desk. We're closing the investigation. No violation found. The relief didn't come right away. I expected to feel something bigger. But all I felt was how much damage had already been done. Quiet, lingering, unspoken. Reputations don't heal just because someone says you're clean. You can return Monday, she added. I nodded, but my thoughts weren't on school. They were on Zach. He'd changed since the talk. Not dramatically, but in small ways. He smiled more, spoke without waiting for permission, looked people in the eye. For someone like him, that was a revolution. But the world wasn't done watching. 2 days after I returned to work, a video began circulating online. Grainy footage from 5 years ago. A younger version of me at a college protest, shouting into a megaphone. Angry, raw. I'd been speaking about queer youth homelessness. My voice cracked when I said we were tired of being invisible. The video ended with a freeze frame of my face, mid-shout, red-faced and emotional. The caption read, "This is who teaches your kids?" By the time I got home, the video had over 40,000 views. Parents started emailing. Some called for my removal, Others defended me. The school board held an emergency meeting. Zach saw the video too. I found him pacing the hallway, fists clenched. "They're twisting everything again," he said. I wanted to tell him I didn't care, that I'd been through worse. But that would have been a lie. "They're not mad at what I said," I told him. "They're mad because I said it out loud. I hate that they make you feel ashamed for that." "I'm not ashamed of who I am," I said. "But I'm tired of being punished for it." Zach's eyes didn't move from mine. Then don't be. The next day, I was called into another meeting. This time it wasn't just the principal. There were 2 board members. One had a stack of printed comments. The other had a legal pad with my name written across the top. "We want to avoid further division," one of them said. "If you're willing to step down quietly—" "No," I said. They both blinked. "I won't walk away because people are uncomfortable, especially when all I did was care about a student. That student lives with you. He was kicked out. I gave him a safe place." There was silence. They didn't argue. They didn't threaten. But I could feel the judgment in the way they looked at me. That night I told Zach everything. "I might lose my job," I said. He didn't speak right away. Then, because of me? No, because I didn't play by their rules. "I should go," he said. "Maybe if I leave—" "I won't let you disappear again," I said. "Not for them." He looked at me, his face caught between guilt and gratitude. "I don't want you to lose what matters to you. You matter to me." The words came out too fast, too honest. I regretted nothing. Zach didn't flinch, then let me help. The next morning he posted a video. Just him sitting on the front steps. No music, no edits, just truth. He spoke about being kicked out, about feeling invisible, about finding someone who didn't ask him to change, didn't tell him to hide. He didn't name me, didn't need to. The video went viral in a matter of hours. Thousands of comments, stories from other teens, other teachers, people who understood what it meant to be both young and afraid. By sunset, even the local news picked it up. When I walked into school the next morning, half the staff stopped me in the hallway, not to scold, but to thank me. A guidance counselor pulled me aside and said, "I wish someone had done that for me when I was 16. But not everyone was on our side. Zach's father showed up at my apartment that evening. He didn't knock, just waited near the steps until I came out. "You think you're a hero," he said. "I'm not. You ruined my family." "No, you walked away from your son." "I didn't." He stepped closer. "He's confused." "He's not. He's a kid." "He's a person. One you threw out because he trusted the wrong person with the truth." The words hit him harder than I expected. He looked away, jaw tight. "He was never weak," I added. "You just never listened long enough to hear him." He didn't respond, just turned and left, like he couldn't argue without seeing his reflection in mine. That night, Zach and I sat outside again. No words, just the kind of quiet that says everything. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. "I don't want to keep running." "You don't have to, but I don't know what comes next." "You get to decide that," I said. "And this time, you don't have to do it alone." He nodded slowly. We didn't make promises. Didn't pretend everything would be easy, but we stayed. And that meant more than anything else ever had. 3 weeks passed since Zach posted his video. In that time, everything shifted. People stopped whispering. The judgment dulled. Not because it disappeared, but because something louder took its place. Support. Letters arrived. Dozens. Some from former students, others from people I'd never met. Messages from parents who had once feared what they didn't understand. A student's mother wrote, "I watched your story with my son." We talked. For the first time, he didn't feel alone. I taped that letter above my desk. Zach, meanwhile, stayed steady. He found a part-time job at a bookstore downtown. Quiet work. Predictable hours. He liked that. Said it made him feel real again. We kept living together. Not because we had to, because it worked. We set boundaries, talked when needed, kept our own space, when the noise of everything else became too much. Some nights we watched old movies. Other nights we just sat near each other, letting silence say what words couldn't. The school board never apologized, but they didn't push further. The incident faded into the background, a controversy too complex for people to stay angry about once it stopped trending. And then one morning I found an envelope in my school mailbox. Inside was a handwritten note from the principal. I was wrong to stay silent. Thank you for not doing the same. No signature. But I recognized the handwriting. That week, I was invited to speak at a youth summit across the state. They'd seen Zach's video, read the follow-ups. They wanted a speaker who understood what it meant to lose everything for doing the right thing and still choose to show up. I asked Zach if he wanted to come. He paused. As what? The boy who broke everything or the one who survived it? You get to choose. He agreed. At the summit, the room held almost 200 people, teenagers mostly, a few teachers, some parents, the kind who didn't ask questions. They just showed up and listened. Zach sat in the front row. When I spoke, I didn't tell them how to fix anything. I told them how I almost gave up, how silence nearly won, and how one voice, his voice, changed everything. Then I stepped aside, and Zach took the mic. He didn't stumble, didn't flinch. He looked out at the room and said, "I'm not here to tell you it gets easier. I'm just here to say it matters when someone doesn't leave." The room fell quiet, not out of discomfort, but reverence. After the event, a group of students approached him. One by one, they thanked him, not for being perfect, for being real. On the way home, he looked out the window and said, "That didn't feel like shame. That felt like something else." Like what? Like I finally exist. That night, we sat on the steps again. He asked, "Do you regret any of this?" "No." "Even after everything?" "I'd do it again," I said, "because you're worth it." He nodded, his gaze steady. "I don't know what this is between us," he admitted, "but it feels like the only part of my life I didn't have to fake. We don't have to define it. But I don't want to lose it. You won't." And I meant it. Later that week, Zach's father called. Not to threaten, just to talk. He asked how his son was doing. I told him. He didn't say sorry, not directly. But before hanging up, he said, "Maybe I didn't get it. Maybe I still don't. But I'm trying." That was enough. For now. Zach chose not to call him back. At least not yet. "Some doors stay closed for a reason," he said. I didn't argue. Summer crept in. The city slowed. Life became simple again. Not perfect, but livable. Zach turned 20. I baked a cake. He laughed at the frosting, said it tasted like childhood. That night, he fell asleep on the couch, a book on his chest. I watched him for a moment longer than I should have, then turned off the light. Weeks passed. We never labeled what we had. Maybe it was friendship. Maybe it was more, but it wasn't broken, and it wasn't forced. It was honest. One evening, we stood outside watching the sky change. Zach said, "I used to think I'd never make it out." I waited. But now I want to stay, not just alive, present. He turned toward me. "I think I found something here. Not a person. A feeling. Like home." I didn't respond. I just placed a hand gently on his shoulder, because I understood. We don't always need declarations or labels. Sometimes we just need to be seen, to be known, to be safe. And that's what this was. Not a love story, a survival story, a story about choosing to stay together.